Welcome to the deep dive. We grab the sources, pull up the key info, and make sure you walk away knowing what's what. Today, we're plunging into a topic, well, one that many people just assume is a closed door, having kids through IVF, even after a vasectomy.
Yeah, it's a super common assumption, isn't it? That a vasectomy means, that's it for biological children. So our mission today is really to clear that up. We want to give you the facts, explain the procedures, how the tech makes it possible, and honestly talk about the success rates, which are pretty encouraging.
Okay, let's kick off with the single most important fact that basically changes everything. If you're listening, get this. A vasectomy does not switch off sperm production. It just creates a physical roadblock, that's all.
That difference is absolutely fundamental. Yeah, a vasectomy is really a classic example of what we call obstructive infertility. It's a surgical procedure, right? And it's designed specifically to cut or block the vas, the tubes that carry sperm away from the testicles.
Right, so the highway's closed.
Yeah.
But what about the factory itself? Does the body kind of wise up and shut down production because the exit's blocked?
Not at all. That's the fascinating part. The testicles just keep on making sperm normally, same as always. And this is so crucial because it means the raw materials, they're still there. Since the sperm can't get out, the body just reabsorbs them. It's a natural process, completely harmless. And really importantly, because the testicles are still functioning, it has zero effect on testosterone or libido or even ejaculation volume. Sperm is actually a tiny percentage of semen anyway.
Okay. So that totally reframes the problem. It's not about restarting production. It's just finding a detour, right?
Yeah.
Which means you have to go in and get the sperm surgically, bypass the blockage, and then use that sperm for IVF. And almost always with ICSI, you mentioned.
Exactly. Precisely. We're basically sending in a specialist team, you could say, to collect the viable sperm directly from the source, completely bypassing that blocked tube.
Right. And this is where we get into all those acronyms for the retrieval methods. TESA, PESA, TESA. It can sound a bit much if you're hearing it for the first time, but it sounds like there are really two main approaches, aspiration and extraction. Let's maybe start with aspiration, TESA, and PESA.
Yeah, good way to break it down. The main goal is always to get sperm either from the testicle itself or from that coiled structure right next to it, the epididymis. So TESA, that stands for testicular sperm aspiration. It's pretty straightforward. Use a fine needle, draw out some fluid and tissue directly from the testicle. Simple.
Okay, and PESA, that's percutaneous epididymal sperm aspiration. You mentioned the epididymis. Why aim for that spot specifically? Is there an advantage?
Well, the epididymis is kind of like the sperm's finishing school. It's where they mature and really learn how to swim, gain motility. So because of that, sperm we collect using PESA often show better motility, better swimming ability than sperm taken right from the testicle tissue with TESA. These aspiration methods are generally the first choice after vasectomy because they're less invasive and, frankly, they work really well when it's just a simple blockage.
That makes total sense. So better swimmers potentially from the epididymis. Okay, but what if aspiration doesn't yield enough, or maybe the doctor thinks it might be tricky? Then we move to extraction, TESA and micro-TESA. What makes these different, more involved?
Right. So TESA is testicular sperm extraction. This involves making a small incision and actually taking out a tiny piece, a biopsy, of testicular tissue. Then the lab team processes that tissue sample to find the sperm hidden inside. Now, micro-TESA, that's the really advanced version. It's actually quite amazing technically. It uses a high-powered surgical microscope. Imagine trying to find tiny specific threads in a really thick carpet. The surgeon uses the microscope to pinpoint the exact tubules within the testicle that look most promising for sperm production. This lets them get what they need while minimizing damage to the rest of the tissue.
Wow. And the success rate for actually finding sperm with these methods? It's incredibly high, right? Even years after the vasectomy. The numbers I've seen are somewhere in the 80 to 95% range for successful retrieval. That seems huge.
It is. It's a profoundly optimistic statistic. It really reassures couples that fundamentally the man's reproductive system is usually still working. The challenge isn't making the sperm. It's just, getting it to where it needs to go.
Okay, so we figured out how to get the sperm. Problem solved there, mostly. Now, how do we use this surgically retrieved sperm? You mentioned it almost always means ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection. Why is that specific injection step basically mandatory here?
Great question. It's because retrieved sperm especially if it comes directly from the testicle, like with TESA or T's. Well, it might be lower in numbers or it might not swim very well. They haven't had the usual journey, so their motility can be compromised. ICSI is kind of the great equalizer in this situation. Instead of just mixing sperm and eggs in a dish and hoping the sperm penetrates the egg naturally, which might not happen efficiently with retrieved sperm, ICSI bypasses that whole step. The embryologist carefully selects a single healthy-looking sperm and, using a microscopic needle, injects it directly into the center of the egg.
It really sounds like the ultimate targeted approach. You only need one good sperm for each egg, so suddenly the issues with low numbers or poor swimming ability,
Yeah.
they don't matter as much.
Exactly. The quality of that one selected sperm becomes far more important than the total number retrieved, which naturally leads to the next question. What about time? Does sperm quality change if the vasectomy was, say, 15 years ago compared to maybe just 5 years ago?
Yeah, does the sperm just kind of get old sitting around waiting to be reabsorbed?
It's a bit more complex than just aging. Generally, in the first 5, maybe 7 years after a vasectomy, sperm quality tends to hold up pretty well. But when you get into longer-term blockages, let's say 10, 15 years or more, we do start to see a slightly increased risk of certain issues, specifically higher levels of DNA fragmentation within the sperm.
What causes that damage if the sperm isn't even going anywhere?
The thinking is it might be related to a low-level inflammatory response in the storage areas, maybe some increased oxidative stress over time, possibly even pressure buildup from that long-term blockage. Now, this increased fragmentation can make fertilization and healthy embryo development a bit more challenging. But, and this is key, ICSI itself helps overcome a lot of this. And sometimes labs use even more advanced selection techniques, like IMSI, which uses super high magnification to pick the sperm with the absolute best shape and structure, further mitigating those potential DNA issues.
Okay, so even with potential quality changes over time, the lab techniques offer powerful ways to work around it. That's reassuring. And speaking of flexibility, you mentioned earlier that retrieved sperm can be frozen, right? Cryopreserve immediately. That must be a huge practical advantage for couples.
Oh, it's massive. Absolutely. Cryopreservation means the male partner can have the retrieval procedure done at a convenient time without having to perfectly sync it up with the female partner's IVF cycle, which can be complex. They can freeze the sperm and then use it later. And the research is really clear. When used with ICSI, frozen thawed sperm gives success rates that are basically comparable to using fresh sperm. It takes a lot of pressure off the timing.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift gears then to the big question everyone considering this wants to know. What are the actual chances? What are the real odds of having a baby this way?
Right, the bottom line. And the really good news here is that once you have the sperm retrieved and you're into the IVF process, the success rates for post-vasectomy cases are generally very similar to IVF success rates for other types of male factor infertility. But, and this is the most critical point, the single biggest factor influencing success is, without a doubt, the age of the female partner.
So it really comes down to the woman's age and egg quality, much more than how long ago the vasectomy was or even which retrieval method was used.
Yes, overwhelmingly so. For women under 35, the chance of a live birth per IVF cycle is typically somewhere between 30 and 35%. That's a solid number per attempt. But that percentage does start to decline, and sometimes significantly as a woman gets closer to 40 and beyond. The age of the vasectomy itself, it's really a minor factor compared to her ovarian reserve and egg health.
And we should stress that term you used, live birth rate. That's the crucial metric, isn't it? Not just getting a positive pregnancy test, but actually having a baby.
Absolutely. That's the goal everyone is aiming for. And it's important to look at the cumulative picture, too. While one cycle offers a decent shot, many couples will need more than one try. The data suggests that most couples who do succeed will achieve pregnancy within 1 to 3 IVF cycles. In favorable cases, say, a woman under 35 with good egg quality, the cumulative success rate after about 3 cycles can reach as high as 60 to 80%. So persistence often pays off. It's often a marathon, not a sprint.
We've covered the science, the procedures, the odds, but there's a whole human side to this. The original vasectomy was usually a very deliberate, permanent decision. Now, needing to bypass that, maybe because of a new relationship or just changed desires, that must carry some real emotional weight, right?
It absolutely does. You hear men talk about feelings of, well, guilt sometimes, or even self-blame, especially if they're now pursuing this with a new partner. That feeling of having to undo a past choice can add a layer of invisible stress to what's already a pretty intense process, physically, emotionally, financially.
So how can couples best handle that emotional side, apart from just acknowledging it's tough?
Communication is key, as always, being open with each other. And sometimes seeking out counseling, particularly from someone who specializes in fertility issues, can be incredibly helpful. It can help kind of neutralize any shame or blame around that past decision. Recognizing life changes, circumstances change, and focusing that energy forward on preparing for this process is really vital.
Okay, speaking of preparation, what are some practical things couples can actually do, lifestyle-wise, to try and optimize their chances before they even start the retrieval or the IVF cycle?
Yeah, optimizing health for both partners is huge. It's definitely not just about one person. So the basics. Absolutely no smoking, cutting back significantly on alcohol, trying to reach and maintain a healthy body weight, a healthy BMI. For the male partner specifically, leading up to sperm retrieval, focusing on antioxidants can be beneficial, so lots of colorful fruits and vegetables. And critically important, avoiding heat exposure to the testicles.
Like hot tubs, saunas, maybe even laptops directly on the lap for long periods.
Exactly those things. Even just mild but sustained increases in scrotal temperature can negatively impact sperm development and, crucially, DNA integrity. So every little step taken to reduce oxidative stress and keep things cool down there is basically an investment in the quality of the sperm they hope to retrieve. And for both partners, finding ways to manage stress is really important too, whether that's exercise, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, counseling. Anything that helps manage the body's stress response can support the delicate biology involved in fertility.
This whole deep dive has really highlighted something quite profound, I think. Even though a vasectomy creates this permanent physical block, the incredible advances in assisted reproductive technology mean that the hope for a biological family doesn't necessarily have to be blocked permanently, too.
That's a great way to put it. Perhaps the biggest benefit of our art in this specific situation is almost psychological. It effectively removes that feeling of absolute permanence from a decision made perhaps years ago under different circumstances. It genuinely restores hope. It's really a remarkable example of biology and technology working hand in hand to help fulfill a very fundamental human desire.
This has been incredibly illuminating, a really thorough look at the possibilities.
And of course, we do need to remind everyone listening that this discussion has been purely for educational purposes, just breaking down the information available. It absolutely does not constitute medical advice. You should always, always consult with your own doctor or a fertility specialist for advice tailored to your specific health situation.
Absolutely. And if you are looking for more comprehensive information on the entire IVF process, you can find a wealth of resources over at ivf4me.com. That's pronounced IVF for me.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.
We hope you'll join us again next time.